Jesus told Peter to forgive 70 times 7. Is there a time limit to forgiveness, or is forgiveness a never-ending act? And what does it have to do with end-time prophecy? The answer will surprise you. In this final episode of this 3-part video series, we are now left with 2 pending questions. When or how does Israel relate to the firstborn line of Adam, that they should receive an extended prophetic timeline of 70x7 that Jesus confirmed to Peter in Matthew 18:21-22? And how can they be benefactors of a supposedly New Testament concept of forgiveness in an Old Testament setting? It may surprise you, but way before Jesus was born, God publicly declared Israel as his firstborn son to the nations. Exodus 4:22. This makes a total of 3 sons that hold a firstborn legal office within the family of Adam that appear in the biblical narrative. Sinful Cain before the flood, sinful Israel after the flood, and sinless Jesus, firstborn replacement. By identifying the 3 firstborn contenders within the family, we now must rightly divide, or sort out its meaning within the Bible's given boundaries. We do this by using the flood waters of Noah as a boundary line in human history. This method may seem odd, but Peter employs the flood on 2 different levels. First, the flood divides from the old, from the new world, 2 Peter 2, 5, 3, 4, 7. And second, the flood is a type of baptism, 2 Peter 3:21. The flood represents a simplified dispensational overview of human history. By using the flood as a great divide, like Peter did, we can easily picture in our minds a horizontal line as divided by Noah's flood with the old world on the left and the new world on the right. The flood represents God's initial summary judgment rendered upon humanity collectively, while our current world awaits another judgment cycle. Except this time, it will be a final judgment rendered upon individuals at the Great White Throne Judgment and final judgment upon the earth by fire. 2 Peter 3:7. Peter's flood overview also helps put the firstborn legal line of the family in perspective as it relates to the extended timeline of 70 times the initial 7 mark, especially if you consider when the flood occurred, which was in the 10th generation of Adam. Yet Adam's firstborn line, as represented by Cain, had up to 7 generations. Clearly, more time was needed to legally comply with the firstborn obligations, or the eternal inheritance of mankind would be lost forever. The 7 times measure, which is based on God's 7-day creation week standard, fell short of saving mankind due to the sin issue. The only remedy for sin was to recreate by and through God's only begotten, firstborn Son. This involved an extension of time in the old pre-flood world and a follow-up final judgment at the end of the new world upon completion of Christ's work of recreation. Lamech's motion to extend the time of the firstborn line was timely because it was heard before the 7-fold deadline of Cain. Lamech's additional time request cleared the way for Christ to complete his work of recreation. More importantly, Christ's work week is the literal fulfillment once on the stage of human history, in compliance with the 7 set times of the Lord listed in Leviticus 23. After the flood, the firstborn office of humanity transitioned onto a national platform because Noah's 3 sons became the nations of the world. Genesis 10. Israel's birth position, although the last to be born as a nation in the natural world, will be the first national body to be born again and holds the firstborn position of the family of God. With the sin and the firstborn issues resolved by way of summary judgment in the old, pre-flood world, Israel takes the firstborn office of Adam to new heights on new territory centuries before Christ's day. Why? Because the granting of Lamech's 70x7 extension plea allowed the time needed for Christ to come in the new post-flood world as the firstborn replacement for both Cain and Israel, and to fulfill all legal obligations for all heirs of the family on an eternal scale. His shed blood cancelled humanity's death sentence. Moreover, Christ lives on to continue his recreation work week until all things are new, both nationally and personally. He does this because God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. John 3:16. That is all it takes to become a part of his eternal family. Today's article was inspired the book entitled His Story Through His Bloodline, The Genesis Pre-Flood Prophecy of the Ages, Available, the his-storychannel.com.